Chapter 1. The Silver River and the Old Wooden Bridge. Once upon a time in a peaceful countryside, there was a small village named Van Phuc. The village lay beside a gentle river known as the Silver River, whose waters shimmered like liquid starlight, weaving through the rice fields like a celestial ribbon across the land. Spanning the river was an old wooden bridge, weathered by time and moss-covered. Villagers called it Dream Bridge, for they believed that walking across it under a full moon would bring auspicious dreams. No one remembered who built it, and no one knew why the bridge would creak softly whenever the wind passed through, as if it sighed. The elders often whispered, "That bridge holds a sorrowful secret. Best not speak of it, lest we awaken what should sleep." The children were curious, but the adults warned them. Don't play on the bridge during a crescent moon. Don't call anyone's name while crossing alone. And so the bridge stood silently, watching over harvests and footfalls, hiding a secret within its ancient, decaying wood. Chapter 2. Whispers Under the Moonlight. As the moon climbed high, its silver glow spilled across the river like a silk veil. In Van Phuc village, full moon nights were quiet. Only the sounds of insects and rustling bamboo filled the air. No one dared cross the wooden bridge during these nights. They said a spirit returned then, standing silently at the center, eyes fixed far away. One night, a drunken man stumbled across the bridge at moonrise. The next morning, he sat wordlessly by his door, eyes hollow, murmuring, "I saw someone." He didn't speak, just stared and vanished. From that day, he never crossed the bridge again at night. Children grew up with stories, half-truths told in hushed tones. When mist thickened or thunder rolled, they'd whisper, "The bridge sighed again last night. Maybe the spirit's still there." Some dismissed it all. They blamed age and wind for the creaking beams. But the elders knew better. Some things aren't seen with eyes, but felt with reverence. And no one could have guessed that soon, a small child would be the one to stir the story buried beneath 100 years of silence. Chapter 3. Ha Mi, the Orphan and the Floating Lanterns. In the village of Van Phuc lived a young girl named Ha Mi. She had lost both her parents in a great flood when she was only 3. Though the villagers took her in with kindness and shared bowls of rice, Ha Mi grew up quietly, different from the other children. Despite being cared for, there was always a void inside her. She barely remembered her parents, only knowing that one stormy night, the Silver River had risen high and swept them away. Since then, every full moon, Ha Mi would go to the riverbank, folding small lotus lanterns from banana leaves and placing wax candles inside. One by one, she would float them down the stream, whispering, "Mama, Papa, are you cold? Can you see me from there?" The villagers got used to the sight. Those who passed by would lower their voices and gaze gently at the little girl sitting alone by the water. One old woman, watching from afar, once murmured, "That child has a bond with the river. Perhaps the heavens chose her for something the rest of us dare not do." Her words faded into the wind, but fate had already begun to stir. The wooden bridge still stood, the silver river still flowed, and that little girl with watchful eyes would be the first to hear whispers from beyond. Chapter 4. A strange encounter by the riverbank. One night under a crystal clear sky, the moon rose full and bright like a pearl disk hanging above the treetops. Its reflection danced across the surface of the river, turning the water into a silvery dream. As usual, Ha Mi brought her lanterns to the river and gently let them float. The small flames shimmered, drifting peacefully downstream like little souls searching for home. But that night something was different. Just as she released the last lantern, a voice rose behind her, deep and calm. Beautiful. The light feels like a path guiding someone home. She turned around. There, sitting on a large flat rock by the water's edge, was an old man. His beard was long and white, his robe faded brown. His eyes were deep and wise, yet kind. He didn't seem surprised to see her. He simply smiled, watching the lanterns disappear into the night. After a while, he spoke again. Such a young girl, and yet your heart carries enough warmth to light an entire river. Hami didn't quite understand, but she sat quietly listening. The old man's voice lowered. Some souls are not freed by incense or rituals. They need someone to listen, to believe, to remember. Then he looked straight into her eyes and said, "If your heart remains pure, this river will return what it once took." With that, he rose and walked slowly down the riverbank, disappearing into the mist like a dream. Hami sat for a long time, the man's words echoing in her mind like a forgotten song. She didn't know what awaited her, but one thing was certain. From that night on, her life would never be the same. Chapter 5. The Prophecy in the Old Man's Eyes. After the full moon night, the image of the old man in brown robes lingered in Hami's dreams. He didn't speak in those dreams, only looked at her with calm, sorrowful eyes filled with silent trust. In the days that followed, the words he had said echoed again and again in her heart. If your heart remains pure, this river will return what it once took. Hami began watching the Silver River with a new awareness. It still flowed gently, just as it always had. But now she noticed something else. Every time she approached the wooden bridge, she could hear soft groans from the planks. Not just the usual creaking of old wood, but something slower, heavier, like a tired breath. One evening, while standing at the center of the bridge, she felt a chill rise from below. It wasn't from the wind. It was something deeper, like someone was standing right beside her, silent, invisible. She whispered, "Is someone here?" At that moment, a strange wind blew across the bridge. Bamboo leaves rustled along the riverbank. The water rippled, and a dry leaf spun through the air in a perfect arc, landing gently at her feet. A strange clarity filled her heart. The bridge, the river, the moonlight, and herself, they were all bound together. That night, for the first time, Hami made a decision. Tomorrow, I'll return to the bridge, at moonrise, alone. Chapter 6. The bridge groans in the night. That night, Hami didn't sleep. She waited in silence until all the lights in the village went out, and the moon had risen high above. The air was cool, carrying the earthy scent of wet rice fields and river mist. She held a small lantern in her hands. Its flame flickered like the beating of her anxious heart. Step by step, she walked toward the wooden bridge. As soon as she stepped onto it, she paused. A long, low creak echoed beneath her feet. Not loud, not sudden, but slow and deliberate, like a sigh drawn from deep within the wood. Her breath caught, but she didn't stop. The moon cast her shadow onto the old planks. When she reached the center of the bridge, she looked down into the water, calm and still like a mirror. Then suddenly, her lantern went out. A cold wind swept over the bridge, and she realized she was no longer alone. In front of her, in the center of the bridge, stood a young man. He was tall, dressed in rough gray cloth. His long hair was tied neatly behind him. His face was pale. He hadn't stepped from the shadows. He had been there all along, simply waiting for her to see him. He didn't speak. He only gazed at her with eyes that held no hatred, only deep sadness. The air thickened. Silence surrounded them. Hami swallowed hard, but stepped forward. She asked softly, "Is it you, the one the river took?" The young man nodded. His voice rose gently, like wind through bamboo. "My name is Thien Khanh, and I've waited for someone like you for a very long time." Chapter 7. The Carpenter's Spirit, Thien Khanh. Thien Khanh stood quietly, as if lost in memories too old to name. Moonlight lit his face, young and calm, but his eyes held centuries of sorrow. Hami didn't move. The river breeze grew colder. Then Thien Khanh spoke, voice soft as drifting mist. "Long ago, I was a humble carpenter in this village. When the people decided to build a wooden bridge across the river, I was chosen to shape the beams, raise the posts. Every cut I made, every plank I placed, was with care. I wanted it strong enough to carry the weight of our village's hopes." Hami listened, heart pounding. But then, the rains came. The river rose. Part of the bridge was swept away before it could be completed. Afraid, the villagers called upon a geomancer. He said, "If you want this bridge to last 100 years, it must be bound with a human's blood, a nameless one." And so, they chose me. Thien Khanh looked into the river as if he still saw it rising around him. "They didn't kill me. They asked me to stand at the center post as the flood returned. The bridge held. The village was saved, and I was never seen again." His hands clenched as if they still remembered the cold pull of the current. "Since then, my soul has remained tied to this bridge, not by hate, but by the simple pain of being forgotten." Hami's eyes filled with tears. "No one remembers me as a carpenter, as a person. They only call me a ghost between the planks." He looked at her now, not with sorrow, but with quiet hope. "I don't need revenge. I only wish someone would remember that I lived." Chapter 8. The Story of the Sacrificed Soul. The wind whispered across the bridge, carrying the scent of damp wood and river moss. Hami sat down facing Thien Khanh, not afraid but moved. After a long silence, she asked, "Don't you hate them? The ones who left you behind?" Thien Khanh closed his eyes for a moment. "At first, yes. When I still felt time passing, I blamed them. I grieved, but anger fades. What hurts more is being forgotten." His voice was neither bitter nor angry. It was tired. "No incense was lit for me. No name was spoken. I became just another shadow in the night. I never wanted to haunt. I only wanted to be remembered as someone who once helped this village." Hami looked at him. The bridge beneath her no longer felt cold. Her heart beat with a quiet certainty. She said softly, "I'll remember you. I'll tell your story. I won't let you disappear." The wind stilled. The river grew calm. Thien Khanh smiled, a gentle, sad smile that reached deep into her heart. "Thank you." Then he faded like mist. Hami was left alone beneath the moonlight, but now she carried a purpose. She would bring his story back to life, no matter what. Chapter 9. The Spirit's Silent Nights. The next morning, Hami woke with dark circles under her eyes, but her heart was full of resolve. She was no longer just the quiet girl with lanterns. She was someone who had made a promise to a forgotten soul. She began telling Thien Khan's story to the villagers, first to her elderly neighbor, then to the market vendor, then to the children who played by the river. But no one believed her. Ghosts? Nonsense, just a child's fantasy. She's just lonely, making things up. That bridge creaks because it's old, not haunted." Their words stung, but Hami didn't stop. Every night she still returned to the bridge. She waited patiently in the moonlight, listening for the voice she now knew by heart. But Thien Khanh didn't appear again. Doubt crept in. Had she imagined it? Was it all just a dream? Then one night, as she lit her lantern and set it on the water, something small and strange happened. A cluster of wild forest flowers, purple and fragile, lay in the center of the bridge, right where Thien Khanh had once sat. It was not a dream. He was watching. Encouraged, Hami kept going. She wrote his story on slips of banana leaves and pinned them to the bamboo poles along the river. She told it to children, not as a scary tale, but as a piece of forgotten truth. Children listened, and so did the adults from a distance. She knew, to make others believe, sometimes you have to walk the path alone. And Hami, once an orphan beside the river, was now the one walking a road no one else had dared to take. Chapter 10. The journey to break the curse begins. Even when Thien Khanh no longer appeared, Hami didn't give up. Each evening, she sat by the river, folded lanterns, and whispered stories to the wind as if he were still beside her. Then one early morning, the village awoke to a scream. "The bridge! Something's leaking from the bridge!" People rushed to see. From the center post of the wooden bridge, a black sap was oozing, thick, sticky, and smelling of earth and rot. It dripped slowly, darkening the planks like old blood. No one could explain it. It hadn't rained, the wood was dry, but the ooze kept flowing. Rumors flared like sparks. Is it cursed? Could the spirit be real? I dreamed of a boy on a bridge. He didn't speak, just stared at me. Night after night, more people admitted to dreaming of the same boy, standing silently in the moonlight, eyes full of sorrow. Hami realized this was her moment. She began writing Thien Khanh's story in longhand, copying it page by page. She tied each piece to trees along the riverbank and read them aloud to any child who'd listen. She didn't beg for belief. She simply remembered aloud, with kindness, with clarity. And then something changed. That evening, as her lantern floated on the river, the murky waters beneath it turned crystal clear. Small fish swam alongside it. The breeze hushed. The bridge didn't creak. Hami whispered toward the water, "I'm keeping my promise, just a little longer. Please wait for me." Chapter 11. Doubt and Mockery. Though the strange events around the bridge and river had spread through the village, many of the older folk, those grounded in reason, dismissed it all. Wood leaks sap. That's natural. Kids dream weird things all the time. She's just lonely, poor thing. They laughed. They whispered. They scoffed. Hami heard it all. She's been possessed. She's making things up for attention. But she didn't cry. She didn't argue. She just kept going, folding her lanterns, placing slips of stories by the water, and returning to the bridge each night to sit in silence. And then something shifted. The very ones who had mocked her began having dreams. Old Mr. Tu, who once called her delusional, dreamt he was standing on the bridge at midnight. A young man stood before him, silent, staring, then turned away and vanished into the wind. The next day, Mr. Tu shared his dream at the tea stall. Others laughed at first until Mrs. Ba, the beetle seller, said she'd had the same dream. So had little T, an 8-year-old boy. One by one, the villagers began to whisper, "I dreamed of him too." A silent figure, a sorrowful stare, a message unspoken but heavy in the air. It couldn't be coincidence anymore. Hami listened quietly as the story spread. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The spirit no longer whispered only to her. Now the entire village was beginning to hear. Chapter 12. The village dreams together. As more and more villagers shared their dreams, an uneasy hush fell over Van Phuc. Laughter faded. Conversations turned cautious. Even the river seemed to listen. The dreams were always the same. A boy standing at the center of the bridge, eyes heavy with grief, saying nothing, before vanishing into moonlight. Then the strange happenings began. One morning, Mrs. Sow, who raised fish in floating cages, found all her fish dead. Belly up and still, the water murky and foul-smelling. The next day, Mr. Lai, who grew flowers along the riverbank, noticed all his blooms wilted. Only the ones near the bridge. The rest of the village stayed untouched. Rumors once laughed off, now spread in hushed voices. Is this the spirits doing? Is the bridge angry? Even those who'd once scoffed now looked toward Hami, not with scorn, but with uncertainty, and maybe hope. She didn't say, "I told you so." She simply walked to the center of the bridge, looked up at the moon and whispered, "If the river is angry, please give me more time. I'll help them remember you." At that very moment, a gust of wind swept through. Leaves danced across the bridge, and the murky waters below went still. A pale moonbeam slipped through the clouds and shone directly onto the bridge's center post, the very place where Thien Khanh once stood. Hami closed her eyes. She felt him there, not as a ghost, but as a soul, waiting, listening, believing. Otronanom, Chapter 13. The River's Fury and Vanishing Fish. Just one night after the muddy writing appeared on the bridge's center post, the silver river began to change. The water darkened, not red like blood or black like ink, but a deep, murky green that pulsed with something old and unspoken. The river no longer swayed gently. Instead, it stirred in strange, uneven ripples, like the skin of someone shivering. Fishermen cast their nets, but for 3 days they pulled up nothing, not a single fish. The floating fish cages near the banks filled with dead fish, white bellies, blank eyes, and a stench that clung to the air like sorrow. No one had explanations, no storms, no poison, just a river gone still and angry. Some villagers tried to burn incense. Others held small offerings. One family brought in a wandering priest, but that priest left before finishing the ritual. "The spirit doesn't want offering," he said. "It wants to be remembered." That line spread through the village like fire, and suddenly all eyes turned to Hami, the girl who still walked the bridge, the girl who still whispered to the water, the one who had been talking to a soul long before anyone else believed. She didn't look back. She simply stepped onto the bridge, hands gentle on the old wood, and whispered, "If you're angry, I understand. But wait a little longer, I'll make them remember." A wind stirred the candles around her. Leaves lifted and fell in spirals. The water, once restless, calmed just slightly. And in that moment, bathed in silver light, Hami knew. Thien Khanh was still listening, still waiting. Chapter 14. A Night of Lanterns and Remembrance. A week later, the village elders gathered beneath the ancient banyan tree. The decision was unanimous. For the first time in generations, the village would hold a night of remembrance. Not for a festival, not for celebration, but for a man whose name had been lost in silence. And so, on the appointed night, villagers came, quietly, respectfully. A bamboo table was placed in the center of the bridge. Upon it, Hami laid a small sign she had written herself. In memory of Thien Khanh, the soul of the bridge. There was no incense, no feast. Only wildflowers gathered from the forest, paper lanterns floating in the water, and Hami's voice telling his story, the truth, not the myth. Old men sat at the edges, heads bowed, children curled around Hami's feet. Even the skeptical came, standing back but listening. As the night deepened, every lantern drifting down the river suddenly glowed brighter, lighting the water like a trail of stars. Someone whispered, "It's like he's here." Then the clouds parted. The full moon shone directly upon the center of the bridge, on the exact post where Thien Khanh had once stood. The wind stopped, the water stilled, and the entire village fell silent. Hami bowed her head. "Thien Khanh, they remember you now. You are no longer alone." In her heart, something long held melted away. Not sorrow, but a weight, a burden lifted, and in its place, peace. For the first time in 100 years, his name was spoken, and someone finally listened.